How do we talk about health and appearance without creating shame?
Welcome to Voice Notes Suck with Jay and Dave.
We're constantly told to love ourselves, while being surrounded by messages that tell us not to. In this episode, we talk about body positivity, comparison, and how to find pride without shame.
So, Jay, episode 7 of series 3. We're getting closer and closer to the end of this series. This episode is called Mirror Mirror and is about body positivity. And I know it's something that both you and I are passionate about. And both you and I want people to have good and positive mental and physical health. And I want to really sort of discuss some of the challenges around body positivity, promoting maybe some unhealthier aspects, and potentially where you and I think the lines are regarding that. Like what becomes detrimental, what is a force for good, those kind of things.
Dave, this is my favourite subject because I have met so many people who don't like their bodies. They don't like the way their bodies look. And we're encouraged not to like the way our bodies look by companies, advertisers, media, the list goes on. And my philosophy is always every body is beautiful. It doesn't matter what your body looks like. It is beautiful. It's an amazing thing. It carries around your personality, your personal reality. It tells us things about our emotions. It's a marvel. It's an absolute marvel. And I always get sad when people self-deprecate about their bodies. How about you, Dave? How do you feel about bodies?
It's not just a meat mech with a rigid skeleton. It's more than that. No, you're right. It is a marvel. And what it enables from individuals in general is absolutely incredible. Some of the feats that bodies can get up to is insane. Some of the sporting feats or the human achievements or, pushing ourselves to the limits. Like, yes, the body is a marvel. I am approaching this episode, to begin with at least, from a more individual perspective than a societal perspective. And that's because I've got a skin condition that is very, very visible across my torso. And it meant for a long time I was incredibly uncomfortable taking my shirt off in public. That was a challenge, a hurdle to overcome. I was also overweight, which didn't help that challenge, and not just a little bit overweight either. I was substantially overweight and unhealthily overweight, and that had an impact on how I viewed my body too. So individually, I've had some challenges, whereas from a broader perspective, I fully agree with you. Our bodies are marvels and they are something to be celebrated. It's that line between, where do we stop the celebration if it's gonna push unhealthy behaviours?
Now, here's something that I am very passionate about, and I will always push this message, and not a lot of people seem to grasp the concept of this. But it's always bothered me when people post online how they were unhappy with how they looked when they were bigger. Yeah, because what they're doing, when they do a comparison like a then and now, or this is how big I was and look at me now, they may think that they're celebrating something there. But unfortunately, what they're actually doing is making people who are bigger feel really, really bad about themselves. And that person doesn't intend to do that. I'm not saying that is what they're doing, but it does, and people don't ever think about that. They think they're celebrating their achievements, they think they're celebrating the wins, when what they're actually doing is they're criticising someone inadvertently for being or looking a particular way. And I think that's perpetuated by these weight loss groups. Controversial, don't care. If you run one of these groups and you're listening, I think that it's an unhealthy society that is being cultivated there, and it needs to stop or change.
To challenge that, Jay, I think there are issues with some of those groups, like you say, and I think there are issues from lifestyle magazines or lifestyle accounts or whatever you want to call them. You know, these what's the right word? I can't think of the word, but you know how these images are perfection, and how we saw in the 90s how you know, images were changed and edited to give a certain look or a certain feel. I will push back on a part of it, though. We wouldn't have that same attitude if someone was celebrating a life achievement. We wouldn't have that same attitude if someone was celebrating a promotion or a sporting achievement. If someone won a league title and they celebrated it, you wouldn't blame them for everyone else feeling bad about not winning the title. So I think there's a line there, isn't there, between personal responsibility and society pushing unhealthy habits back on people. And that's what I want to discuss today a little bit, is where we think that line is. Where can it be moved? Should it be moved? How do we move it if it should? That's the discussion that I want to have today.
No, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying there, Dave. This is the thing. It's a really, really subtle thing. It's what's not said that is the issue. It's like saying, oh, I hate my body because I'm fat. All that someone hears, if they have a similar body, is, I hate your body because you are fat. And then that makes them feel bad about themselves. It perpetuates that feeling. If someone says, oh, I'm really happy because I've won this achievement, yeah, that may make someone go, oh, I could do that too. That's a positive. It's a positive self-reflection. A negative self-reflection, even if it's a positive intention, that's the problem. So saying, I hated my body when I was fat is basically saying, I hate your body because you are fat. It's no different. And I hate that word, but people use that word too often. And this is what I'm saying. That's how that works. That's what we need to change.
I can understand all of that, and I think you clarified your position. And what you're saying is that someone that's celebrating that journey and someone who's proud of themselves is basically saying they weren't proud of their former selves, and that's what a person who's maybe closer to that former state, an external person who's maybe closer to that former state, is going to attach their thoughts and their position and their perspective to. I can fully understand that. How would you celebrate if you were happy that you'd got yourself fitter, healthier, that you had more energy, that you were more active, that you were feeling better about yourself? How would you celebrate that in a way that you don't think would make people feel like how you've just said? I hope that makes sense.
I do that by not mentioning my physical appearance whatsoever. That's the way you talk about how you feel. You talk about you've got energy. You say your skin feels nicer or something, but just don't focus on the way you look. That's the problem. It's focusing on the way we look. This episode is Mirror Mirror. We're obsessed with mirrors. We're obsessed with the way we look. We're obsessed with reflections, but we forget that we're all reflections of each other. We forget that we feel what someone else feels about themselves. If someone feels a particular way about themselves, we feel that too. But we feel both sides, and it's so subtle, it's so nuanced. It's important to very consciously be aware of that when we're talking about who we are and our health and things like that. It's really, really important.
I can understand why you want that, Jay, but the challenge, and I know it's another challenge to this, but are there any other aspects where you would celebrate the feelings of outcomes alone? You wouldn't celebrate the journey, you wouldn't celebrate the actions, you just celebrate the feelings of those actions and journey. I can't think of another situation where we do that. And that's going to make this very, very hard and a very hard change to implement, no matter how much of a reflection we are of each other or how much of a reflection we are of society as a whole. And the other thing that I'd add is, I think if we're not willing to discuss some of these things, then we're promoting unhealthy behaviours. We're promoting behaviours that can lead to very, very serious health concerns and risks as well. And then there's further impacts from that, societally wise, as well as more individually based.
Again, I'm not encouraging that either. What I'm saying is, the issue we seem to have are people chucking a negative focus on the past of how they used to look, and then celebrating how they look now. Like, if you just celebrate how you look, that's well different. It's so different. When you compare the way you look to how you looked in the past, ultimately what you're doing is you're just comparing yourself to anyone who looks like that, because that's not who you are anymore. If you're celebrating how you look, if you're like, I feel really handsome today, or I love the way my body is, yeah, that is completely different, completely different. That's what we need to be focusing on. Forget about the past. Focus on how you feel now. You can have that personal recollection of the past for your own mental well-being, that's fine. But when it comes to expressing it to others, and people do it all the time on social media, I think social media is bad for this, to be quite honest. This is one of the issues, is social media as well. It perpetuates these feelings. But just keep that personal and celebrate how you look, celebrate your achievements, celebrate what you're doing, celebrate who you are. That is a positive thing. But comparing yourself to the past is not good.
It's interesting, Jay. It's an interesting perspective. And I can only relate from my own experience, and having lost a substantial amount of weight, like 1/3 of my body weight, I wanted to show the difference off. I wanted to talk about the differences. I wanted to explain what I'd done. I wanted to celebrate and share my hard work and effort, as well as the outcome of that journey, and talk about the benefits that it offered me versus the risks that were in place from, where I used to be. It's really difficult, I think, from an individual perspective, to be looking outside of your box and thinking, to even consider that you're comparing yourself to someone else in that moment. It's such a hard thing for people to do. Such a hard thing for people to do. Well, it wasn't even on my mind when I was talking about my journey. Not at all. Just didn't even consider it.
But then that raises the question, who are you to tell people how to live their lives? They've not come to you for any advice. They're not asking for it. You're just showing them anyway. Do you want people to care? I know it sounds harsh, and I'm interested in the reason for doing that. What was the reason for doing that? Why did you want to show that off? Why did you want to show your journey as though it was a positive thing that you're not that big person anymore? Because there are people who are big, and that's all they'll see. All they'll see is, this guy doesn't like big people, so he must not like me. So therefore, is his advice sound? Is his celebration actually a celebration? I'm not dismissing any of it. I'm just asking questions, Dave. But those are the questions that it raises for me.
I'd say a few things on that. I wasn't offering advice. I was celebrating my journey. And I think that's very, very different. I think people could choose to take it as advice if they wanted to, but that's not what I was offering. Second of all, I was celebrating my journey, the work, the resilience, the fortitude, the strength, the desire, the drive, the 18 months of discipline I wanted to celebrate that. And it's none of anyone else's business why I want to celebrate that. It just isn't. And they are free to take that as they want, but that's their choice. I understand why people would think, or could think, that a judgment was being made about them. But the only judgment I was making in that moment Well, I don't even think I was making a judgment. I think I was celebrating my journey and the hard work, effort, resolve, dedication, resilience, fortitude, and everything else that it took to complete that journey in that 18 months.
There's the unspoken, subconscious, hidden other stuff going on, though. The unspoken is just as powerful as the spoken. And it also makes me say, if it doesn't matter and if it's nobody else's business that you're celebrating, then why not just do it privately? It's that validation, isn't it? We want validation. We want people to go, yes, you are correct. Again, it's that reflection. Hence our episode title, Mirror, Mirror. You want to say, please validate me. I've done this. I would like some kind of emotional reward, please, from an external source to make me feel justified in what I'm doing. But is it also okay just to do it privately? Do we have to be vocal and shout about it?
We all want validation when we post online, don't we? Even if we're not fully aware that that's what we want, or we don't realise that that's what we're looking for. And I think the people that are feeling bad about themselves on the other end of this scale want validation to feel bad for themselves. They want the reason or an excuse to feel bad for themselves or to feel like they're not liked, when that might not in fact be the case at all. I think the challenge here is if it was real life, if it was people that I was friends with, my family, people I hadn't seen for a while, and they asked me questions like, how are you doing? What have you been up to for the last couple of years? I'd tell them the journey that I'd been through, much like how I shared it online. And yeah, pride's a thing. Pride's a thing. When you've achieved something that you feel is monumental, you want to talk about that and you want to share it. And it doesn't matter what that achievement is. It doesn't matter what form of life it comes in. I think that's something that everyone wants to do and everyone is encouraged to do. And I think that's a positive thing for the most part. It doesn't mean that there won't be negative impacts, but I think the positives vastly outweigh the negatives when it comes to celebrating your achievements, whether it's a weight loss journey, a fitness journey, or a business achievement or a sporting award.
Yeah, I mean, the issue for me is we don't celebrate who we are now enough. We always celebrate who we are in comparison to who we were. Do you know what I mean? Instead of just celebrating who we are and loving our facets and talents and abilities and even the way we look, even if we're bigger, we love it. We're fantastic. We wobble. We've got bits you can grab and you can bounce around. Or if you're really slim, you've got beautiful curves and you've got smooth skin. Or if your nose is big, you're like, I've got a solid power nose. Or if your lips are really thin, you just think I'm a distinguished character. Whatever it is about our bodies needs to be celebrated. Needs to be celebrated all the time. It makes me sad when people self-deprecate, and I don't feel that we should encourage self-deprecation. We should encourage self-celebration, no matter what we look like or what our abilities are in this moment.
Jay, we need to share that message far and wide. Far and wide. We need to clip it. We need to post it everywhere, and more people need to hear that message. I do have concerns from a body positivity perspective and how it's been pushed in society from both ends of the scale in my lifetime, from being almost, size 0, ridiculously thin, dangerously thin, from a health perspective, dangerously thin in terms of supermodels and how we glorified people with airbrushing. That was a word I was looking for in a previous post in the 90s and the 2000s, versus people being unhealthily overweight to the point where they're not being kind to their future self. They are causing themselves serious health issues and causing themselves potentially serious problems as they age. So I wanted to talk about this because I think society needs to find a balance in amongst all of that. And I'm not sure how we do that whilst retaining and pushing a positive outlook all the time. And I think it's important to push that positive outlook, but I also think it's important to balance that against your health as an individual.
Yeah, it's not that complicated though, is it? It's separating health from appearance. They are so different, but the people tie them into the same thing for some reason all the time. It's a mistake. Our appearance has nothing to do with our health, literally nothing. I saw a man stood outside a gym. He had no top on. He was ripped. He looked sculpted, and you could tell that he spent a lot of time taking care of his appearance. Do you know what he was doing? He was vaping.
But they are intrinsically linked by society, Jay. They are. We're both aware of it. It's why we're having this discussion. What measures do you think an individual that is feeling overly self-conscious about their appearance for whatever reason, what could they do to feel better about themselves?
First of all, I would stop comparing yourself to others. That's a big first step. We're all so unique and individual. Genuinely. We're lucky to even be here based on the way that conception goes. So that's the first step. Be grateful for being alive and being on planet Earth. Stop comparing yourself to others and just consider how you would speak to a child. Stand in front of a mirror, look at yourself. Imagine that's a child stood there. How would you treat that child? You wouldn't criticise the body. That'd be a mean thing to do. And unless you're a mean person, then that's something else that would benefit you when dealing with any kind of self-consciousness. Just treat yourself and speak to yourself the way that you would speak to a child.
I'd add in expectations to that as well, whether they're internal or whether we think they're external. We think a lot of expectations are externally placed on us, but almost every expectation that we have in our own brain is placed by us individually. So if you can lose the expectations, if you can learn to be grateful for just being here, having the opportunity to think and to breathe and to love and to laugh, and if you can stop comparing yourself to others, I think those three things are massive. And the famous quote is, comparison is the thief of all joy. And it truly is. So, yeah, I think they're top tips, Jay. Top tips. Not just for body positivity and self-reflection, but in all walks of life. I think if you can have that ethos, that mental attitude as you approach things, you'll have more fun, you'll find more smiles, and you'll enjoy yourself more. And I love that little bit about you wouldn't speak to a child like that, so why are you speaking to yourself like that?
Exactly, dude. Well, we've come to the end of this episode where we talked about body positivity and how complicated it really is. We explored how society, media and marketing have encouraged us to dislike our bodies and how that negativity can affect us physically and psychologically. We reflected on the human body as something amazing, a living, breathing home for our personality and emotions, and how damaging it is when we tear ourselves down through comparison. We also discussed the nuance of transformation journeys and how celebrating progress isn't the same as shaming the past. We spoke about pride, validation, and the risks of projecting our feelings onto others. We asked what it means to be kind to ourselves and why body positivity isn't just about how we look. It's about how we feel, how we think, and how we speak to ourselves, especially if we wouldn't speak that way to someone we love. If this episode made you think, make sure to subscribe to our Substack. It's where we dive deeper into the themes behind the podcast with thoughtful articles, reflections, and updates you won't find anywhere else. It's free for now, and the best way to stay connected between episodes and the series. Thanks for listening to episode 7 of series 3, Mirror Mirror. Please take a moment to follow or subscribe, like and share our podcast. It makes a huge difference. And feel free to continue the conversation in the comments. You can find all of our relevant links in the description. Dave's been Dave, I've been Jay, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Voice Notes Suck.
You've been listening to Voice Notes Suck with Jay and Dave.